Welcome to BWC News. I am Elizabeth. In mid-February, the Deputy Minister of the Russian Ministry of Finance once again made it clear that the sovereign wealth fund will be emptied of other currency assets, especially the euro share, in 2023, and that in the future only the yuan will be retained in foreign exchange assets and only gold and non-monetary assets. Now that the conflict has been going on for a full year, the impact caused is getting bigger and bigger. Some countries have suffered losses, but others have taken advantage of the opportunity. According to a study recently released by Germany, the European conflict has caused global economic losses of about $1.6 trillion in 2022. This study clearly shows that the conflict has caused worldwide supply and output disruptions, with inflation soaring in most countries and consumer purchasing power slipping. Considering the instability of the global economy and rising prices, many companies are investing cautiously. Last year, the world's economic development was severely hit, mainly by developed countries, and in 2022, two-thirds of the global economic losses it caused came from developed countries, while only one-third was borne by emerging markets. By 2023, global losses reach at least $1 trillion or more. In terms of currency status, however, the yuan has seized a higher position over the year along the way. Last September, the settlement currency used for Russian gas exports to China dropped the euro and the dollar in favor of the yuan and ruble. Subsequently, Russia settled its fertilizer trade with Brazil using the yuan. The yuan also surpassed the euro and the yen on Russia's Moscow exchange. At the same time, small and medium-sized enterprises in Russia are using the yuan for foreign settlements as a share of the euro, second only to the dollar. Russia has not only abandoned the dollar and the euro in its wealth funds, but also keeps only gold and the yuan in its foreign exchange reserves. It is in this process that the yuan has risen from its low level to the present, having appreciated by over 4,000 points. On the contrary, the dollar has started to decline. The dollar index shows a continuous downward trend, and although the Fed is still raising interest rates, the depreciation of the dollar can't be stopped. At the same time, although Russia met the joint sanctions of the West, but suffered losses are not as big as the outside world imagined. The ruble did not depreciate, but instead appreciated significantly in 2022, second only to the dollar among major global currencies. In fact, the Fed has continued to raise interest rates several times, leading to exchange rate instability in many countries around the world, and the accelerated return of the dollar to the United States, which on the one hand has prompted a shortage of dollar reserves in many countries, seriously hampering the process of relevant trade settlements, and Iraq is also suffering from it. On the other hand, the strong appreciation of the dollar has caused the devaluation of the currencies of many countries, which in turn has led to a rapid increase in inflation in many countries and a serious exploitation of the livelihood of the economy, and Iraq is hardly spared. In this situation, it is imperative to go to the dollar. According to Reuters, on February 22, the Central Bank of Iraq released a statement on its official website, announcing for the first time that it would allow trade with China to be settled directly in yuan to improve foreign trade financing and stabilize the exchange rate. Salih, the government's economic advisor, also made a point of pointing out that in the past, Iraq imported industrial goods from China, generally settled in US dollars, and settling in yuan was the first time. The Iraqi statement only mentions the use of yuan settlement for imports to China, but gives no further word as to whether exports are also settled in yuan. Considering that Iraq itself is the second largest oil producer in OPEC, with over 70% of its oil production exported to China, if this part is also settled in RMB, it will undoubtedly be an important step for RMB internationalization. But what needs to be clear here is that Iraq's export of oil, whether settled in one currency or multiple currencies, is a freedom within Iraq's sovereignty. In the past, Iraq has done business with China, both import and export, in US dollars, but that path is now somewhat out of the question due to unwarranted US sanctions against Iraq. In fact, since last year, the U.S. Treasury Department and the Federal Reserve Bank of New York have been taking extremely harsh regulatory measures on the Iraqi Central Bank's international trade. If Iraq still wants to finance itself externally, then it has to comply with a specific set of SWIFT global transfer system standards. But this standard is so stringent that it is tantamount to involving Iraq in the Western financial sanctions against Iran and Syria in disguise. Yet Iraq has very close ties with Iran at the energy level, with 40% of its natural gas imported through Iran to provide energy for the electricity system. It is foreseeable that once Iraq bows to the brutal demands of the United States, then not only will relations between Iran and Iraq take a sharp turn for the worse, but Iraq's economic fundamentals will also take a serious hit. At the same time, the Iraqi side has not forgotten to contact the US through diplomatic channels, trying to get the latter to open up, but with little success. Earlier this month, the Iraqi foreign minister led a delegation to the United States to discuss the relaxation of the U.S. Treasury Department's regulatory and sanctions measures against Iraq. However, the negotiation process was very difficult, and the senior Iraqi delegation stayed in Washington longer than planned, but the two sides did not reach much consensus. It is reported that the U.S. has offered more demanding terms in the negotiations, requiring the Iraqi side to cut off energy business with Iran and completely draw the line, and to launch a self-censorship of Iraq's banking sector to prevent Iran from exploiting the loopholes of Western sanctions through the former. But as mentioned earlier, given the Iran-Iraq partnership, it is difficult for Iraq to accept all of these requirements. But Iraq's options are quite limited, and if the U.S. does not ease sanctions, not only will Iraq's external financial environment get tougher, but it will also lead to a significant devaluation of its currency and a continued deterioration of its internal economic situation. In the case of failure to negotiate with the United States, Iraq will have to find another way out. From this perspective, Iraq's announcement to settle its trade with China in RMB at this time can be interpreted as a kind of de-dollarization as a last resort. It is also worth mentioning that before the Iraqi delegation left for the United States, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov visited Baghdad and held talks with Iraqi government officials, focusing on the dollar crisis and strengthening energy cooperation between the two countries. At the meeting, Lavrov then suggested that Iraq could consider settling its accounts in Yuan, promoting the Russian-Iraqi trade system, providing Iraq with a substitute for the dollar and mitigating the impact of sanctions. It is easy to see that Iraq's announcement to settle its trade with China in Yuan at this time may have been inspired by Russia. After all, the latter has been stabilizing its economic situation in recent times by launching bilateral currency settlements with China. The Iraqi government's next plan is to join the Asian Development Bank and deposit its fiscal surplus in it, rather than buying U.S. bonds or increasing its foreign exchange reserves in dollars. In Iraq's view, the Asian Bank can offer a larger loan amount than the World Bank, but at a lower interest rate and with fewer conditions. At the same time, Iraq plans to submit applications for membership in the BRICS group and the SCO. In other words, the announcement of RMB trade settlement with China is just the first step of Iraq's comprehensive look east in terms of monetary policy and diplomatic focus. It's the end of this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel to support. See you next time.